Me and Brother Bill went hunting in the woods in eastern Maine.
Was invited to be on the Bill Maher podcast, whatever he calls it, and uh, and I asked that because I'm a clean and sober guy, like maybe he couldn't smoke weed the whole time.
Does he do that?
That was a deal breaker for him.
Oh my God! What?
Like I was so offended by that.
That's literally like so mean.
That was a clip from a couple months ago from Steveo while on H3H3's podcast. They were discussing Bill Maher and how Steveo asked to be on the podcast and Bill said no if he can't smoke any weed. Steveo, being 16 years sober, took offense to this. At first I didn't think too much of this, I just thought, this is kind of a nothing burger. But then Steveo brought it up again a couple of days ago while talking to Patrick Bet David. And it's quite obvious that Steveo was definitely highly offended by Bill's comments. I don't know what Bill's side of the story is here. We've only heard Steveo's, but check this out.
I just wanted to say something that I watched a piece of your appearance on Bill Maher's show.
Yeah.
And I found the way he spoke to you to be rather insulting. I found it kind of upsetting when the Bill Maher podcast, which I saw you on, reached out and they his thing is he smokes pot the whole time while he interviews people, and I said, hey, I'd happily go on there, but could he, while I'm on, out of respect for my sobriety, could he refrain from smoking pot?
He said no.
He said no, that's a deal breaker.
Wow.
And Mike Tyson's podcast is called Hotboxing. Like the whole point, like, be real. All of these prolific potheads, I've been on their shows, and it wasn't so important to them to blow marijuana smoke in my face.
I did not know that.
For Bill Maher, it was a deal breaker, and I found, and maybe that's why.
So obviously it bothers Steveo a lot as he brought it up again months later, but that's not exactly what I found the most interesting. Don't get me wrong, it's pretty funny that Bill refuses to do a podcast just because he can't smoke some weed. It's not like he just can't take an edible or do it some other way. But hey, it's his podcast, it's his show, so that's why I sort of see both sides of this. What I find really interesting and funny is that Patrick Bet David pretty much exposes how Bill Maher's booking works, and it's pretty insightful.
Because when I sat with him, I'm like, I have no idea where this is going to go.
Yeah.
No idea. And then I felt like one insult, two insults, 3, 4, 5. I'm like, okay. So this probably was booked by his book, because his bookers loved me. Till today, they text me all the time, right?
Yeah.
And their booker said, Pat, we need someone like you with him because he needs to be challenged. Because his bookers are not necessarily same politically aligned with him. And so when we started talking, I'm like, okay, so this wasn't a guest you booked that you wanted to talk to. Somebody else booked this. So I don't know if Bill was interested in, it's like, so I hear you're rich. You can already tell it's not him. Somebody gave him a one-pager.
Yeah.
Hey, this guy's got this kind of money and all this stuff. And so then I said, okay, I'm going to take a different approach. He's not going to let me talk. Every time I talked, he'd cut me off. If you count the minutes spoken, 90% of the time he spoke. I'm the guest on his podcast, but he spoke 90% of the time. So then I said, maybe this is his form of therapy. I'm being serious. Yeah. I said, if this is your form of therapy, I'll play the therapist. No problem.
I just love this comment because that's exactly what Bill Maher's podcast feels like. It feels like he is in a therapy session and his guest doesn't realize that they are his therapist. And it usually gets pretty combative, or it gets pretty awkward, or it just gets really boring listening to Bill go on tirades. Especially now that we've learned he gets most of his news from Globe magazine and The Inquirer and People magazine. Ooh, that's all I really have to say about Bill right now. He will be back. He's always back. Bye.
Me and Brother Bill went hunting in the woods in eastern Maine. The reason why we went up there, we thought we could catch some game.